12 o'clock. We should get going. I'm delighted to welcome Aaron here from Playstack. It's wonderful to have you here with us today. Aaron, you're going to be sort of talking about what it's like to be a games publisher, and our student audience here are sort of, I suppose, keen to understand sort of how they can get into it, what that side of the industry sort of looks like, and maybe hear about your own experiences, moving into publishing. Does that sound like a good place to start?
Yeah, sounds great. Hi
Fantastic.
everyone. So my name's Aaron. I'm a lead producer at Playstack, and I've been in the industry now 25 years. I started at a company called Lionhead Studios. Sadly, it's no longer with us. But first game I worked on was Black and White, and I worked on Fable and a few other bits and pieces. And I got in the industry. Lionhead had a work experience program, and I did a week's work experience at the Lionhead. And then about 5 months later, I had the head of QA ask if I wanted a job, and I got picked out of a couple of hundred people apparently, because they used to get a lot of work experience people every week. Some were looking for jobs, and I was lucky enough to get picked out, and I started in QA, and I'm now in production. I've worked at a number of UK companies. I worked at Codemasters. I've worked at Kuju, what was Kuju at the time. I worked at a couple of mobile studios. I was part of the Zynga UK office when they first arrived in the country before Natural Motion. And I've been very lucky actually. It's been a very varied career, working on PC, console, mobile, AAA, indies. It's a bit of everything really. When I worked at a company called Mastertronic, I worked on like budget IP games, so Bob the Builder, Thunderbirds, etc. All was almost more interesting actually, because you had IP providers you needed to keep happy, as well as making the right game for the audience. So that's a bit about me. I've been at Playstack now for I think about 7 to 8 years, and we initially started on very big on mobile free to play, but then we realized actually mobile free to play is pretty hard, especially at the moment where it's even more hard with the new privacy rules. So we pivoted a bit more on PC and console. So what we focus on now is we focus on PC, console, and premium mobile games. So we've got, when I mean by premium mobile games, I mean either for a paid-for game or a subscription platform, where we have games with Netflix and Apple Arcade as examples. And what my job is three key things really. It's to make sure games are on time, on budget, and on quality. Very important in obviously to make sure it's on time, because you have marketing spends, and you have release windows that you've got to try to hit. On budget is because you want to keep control of the finances. The cheaper you can release a game for, the more profitable you can make it, the greater ROI. And look, we all love to make games, but it's our job to make these developers as successful as possible, because we want the developer to be able to thrive in the industry and be able to release as many games as possible. And the way they do that is by making great games that become financially successful. And so it's our job to make sure that we get them out as quick as they can, as cheap as they can, but also the quality needed in order for them to sell. And that's kind of where I am now.
Fantastic. No, that's really, really helpful to understand. You've had quite an interesting career journey. I think it's been really good. I didn't realize you were working on Black and White. So yeah, good stuff.
First game.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of sort of how a publisher sort of fits within sort of the ecosystem of the games industry, how would you sort of what would you sort of say a publisher's sort of main sort of role was in terms of sort of its relationship to developers?
It's changed. It's changed over the years, and it's changed depending on what the industry's like. Like now, compared to what it was like when I first got in the industry 20 years ago, I'm really sounding old now, back in my day, but like 20, 25 years ago, it was very difficult to make a game. You had to make your own engine. You couldn't buy like assets from an asset store. Everything you had to make yourself. Whereas now, by the end of this meeting, I could have bought a game engine and released a game. Now, don't get me wrong, wouldn't be a particularly great game, wouldn't be a particularly successful game. But I think that it just goes to show how many games there are now and how much competition there is now compared to what they used to be. And don't get me wrong, it's a good thing it's that easy to make games, but it brings other challenges such as discoverability and marketing. Which is I think one of the core reasons to have a producer, one of the core reasons to have a publisher, because it's our job to make sure that your game gets seen, and it's our job to make sure that it gets seen at a showcase or gets a deal with PlayStation or PS Plus or those kind of things. It's and it's that's the issue at the moment is obviously there's thousands of games. If anyone saw any of the showcases recently over the weekend, would have seen how many games there are, right? There's so many great games as well, and it's our job to make sure not only do you hit the right quality, but it's also to make sure that from a marketing point of view, your game gets seen. I think from the quality side is quite an interesting one because we work quite closely with focus test providers like play testing, usability testing. And we work closely with them, and we pay for it ourselves to try and give it more insights, independent insights to the developer. And we're quite lucky with the developers that we work with, always very open to listening, not just to our ideas and our feedback, but also when we get some play testing feedback as well. Because we want, as I mentioned earlier, I'm repeating myself, we want to make the game as good as possible because in order to become a success, you want to see like when you're on Steam, when you get like the overwhelmingly positive, very positive games, we want to get that as high as possible. So when people see the store page, they see the quality of the game very easily.
So, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, you look after an awful lot of relationships by the sounds of things. Obviously, not just with developers, but also other aspects of the industry too, including sort of Q&A. I mean, what sort of skills would you sort of say would be most helpful for someone looking to sort of get into sort of the publishing side of the games industry?
I think it's important to understand what side you want to get into. Is it the production side? Is it the marketing side? I think just I understand where your skill set lies. If it's about trailers and if it's about screenshots and it's about selling the game, then maybe a job in the marketing role. Or if it's more like QA or scheduling, if you're very good at spreadsheets and very good talking in front of people, so you can run like a production stand up and that kind of stuff, then maybe it's the production side that you're interested in. Of course, there's a lot of like game design courses in the UK as well at the moment. There's a lot of and if you're doing one of those or you're coming out of one of those, either look at it from a more I'd look at it from a production side, because I think I've worked with a lot of great producers that are former like game designers, and especially when you come from when you work at an indie publisher, it's really beneficial for when you're trying to get to the weeds of a game and you're trying to deliver reports on how fun a game is or not. So if you have some game design background, that can really help you from a production point of view too.
No, you're absolutely right there. Having that understanding of that basic understanding of game design will naturally just sort of help, well, just understand the processes that you're essentially working with, from a publishing perspective. So, I mean, I probably should have talked a little bit more about the other sort of aspects of publishing sort of beforehand, but before launching into the skills thing. But maybe you can sort of tell me how, sort of marketing differs from production. Obviously, they're completely different entities, but in terms of sort of maybe looking at the day to day, what are your colleagues in the marketing side of the business working on that you're not, basically, as a producer?
So the marketing department are looking at things like for instance, of the showcases that have just happened at the weekend. They're trying to look at how successful the showcases have been. So they'll look at the games at the showcases, and they'll look at the publicly available data, such as follower accounts and that kind of thing, to see how successful some of them showcases have been or not. Because then that helps us future showcases. That helps us to see where we should target from a marketing point of view. They'll also be thinking about things like screenshots or trailers coming up. They often ask the production team for new features so they can make their trailers. So you could have features that slow down time within a game to make it easier to make screenshots, or just having some in-game cheats available to make it easier to like spawn objects or spawn enemies. So when they're building trailers, they're able to set up their like composition a lot easier. And things like that, they'll often come to us with requests, and we'll check the schedule and we'll see if it's easy to do, and if it is easy to do, if it fits in. So that kind of stuff. They also work closely with, as does production, with the social media side. So we keep an eye on the forums, and we keep an eye on the Discord to see what people are saying about the game, and TikTok, etc. And yes, feel free to ask any question, Michael, in the Q&A.
Absolutely, it's interesting. So, so you mentioned sort of community there, community management. Does community management sort of fall under a publisher usually, or is that generally sort of stick with the game devs, or is there a point where things sort of start to migrate?
It all depends on the developer. When we meet a developer and they want us to be their publisher, we'll do some due diligence. We'll ask them, what do they want from us? Sometimes they'll have their own social media manager and they're happy to do the social media, and we will just the marketing team will the marketing team slash our social media managers will like liaise with them. Or sometimes they just want to make the game, right? They haven't, some of them haven't even got QA, and they're just like, we just want help on everything from marketing, from social media management, and also, which a lot of people don't talk about, the actual like more traditional customer services, right? So help request tickets and that kind of stuff, which you find a lot of some of the big companies like 2K and EA, but indies should have that as well, right? You want to have a support email that people can go to if they're having any issues. You do. I don't really want them to. Although they will post on a forum, they will post on Discord if they have an email that they can directly contact us, and we have our own customer service team that deals with day-to-day like help tickets from our players, and that's something a lot of indies don't actually think about. That is important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting that you speak of a bit of a maybe like a sliding scale of how involved you are, or it's not a sort of one size fits all approach. It sounds like it's quite sort of bespoke and quite dependent on the studio themselves. I mean, how do you, out of curiosity, how do you start talking? How do you start having these conversations with studios? You know, what's the process? Do you go looking for them, or do they come looking for you? What's the general sort of movement within, between sort of publishers and developers?
It can vary. I think before we released like Golden Idol and Abiotic Factor, and most importantly Balatro, I think we did a lot more reach out because we were very small fish in a big pond, and not a lot of developers knew us. But since we've had some very successful games, we get a lot of approaches from developers, both at shows and just like emails or people filling the form out online to submit their games. But in parallel to that, we keep an eye on the Steam store. We look at new games that come on the Steam store. So one of the things, if you've got a game that you're working on, whilst your store doesn't have to be perfect, just take a little bit of time working on your screenshots and your capsule art. Just make sure they're as good as possible, because there is a good chance that publishers are occasionally just spending time just looking at the latest games that have been uploaded to Steam, because there's a good chance someone will see them. And so just make sure your capsule art and a couple of your screenshots look really nice. Don't have to worry too much about the store page per se, but just something to catch our eye. I think it's important. But of course, we attend a variety of shows as well, and we get lots of requests for meetings. But of course, you usually just have like a half an hour meeting per person, so those slots to go out pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And you sort of hinted at the idea of, coming across sort of games on various platforms there. I mean, did you want to sort of talk a little bit about self-publishing, and if there's a point at which one makes more sense than the other, to sort of partner with a publisher, that sort of thing? That would be really, really interesting.
It's interesting because I think it all depends on the individual. Like there have been some great examples, individual as in the company or the person, if it's just a solo dev. There've been some great examples of solo devs that have just self-published and they've been very successful. But there are some that wants, as I mentioned previously, wants to just concentrate on the game, and they just want a publisher to do all the rest. Now, I'm obviously working for a publisher. I'm going to be very pro publisher, but I think it's important working with a publisher, because I think there is a lot of things that publishers do, and they have a lot more knowledge of the market than a developer does. I think because of the competition, I think the days of just making a great game and releasing it and hoping it's successful is difficult. It's more and more difficult, right? So you released a great game and it's very sticky, people love it, but then how's that going to get seen? And that's obviously where publishers come in. And I think look, there'll be more examples of indie publishers, indie developers that decide to self-publish, and I'm sure they'll be successful. But I do think the best chance of being a success is working with a really good publisher. And at the moment, because of how amount of games there are, and because how easy it is to make games, every week there seems to be a new indie publisher. So it is a little bit of a minefield out there. You do have to do your research. And what I will say is, if there's just a small inkling that you're not sure about a particular publisher, then just don't sign with them. And I say that even if you're talking with us as well, because it's definitely a two-way street. You have to be confident with us, and we have to be confident with you. And if there's any kind of doubt there, then just say, look, sorry, this isn't going to work for us, and then just back away, and then find another publisher. But it's because that relationship is so important, and we know, like, look, I've worked for publishers before, and I've worked on games being published by publishers before, and I know the difficulties. And one of the things that we pride on Playstack is because the majority of the leadership team have had difficulties with publishers in the past. And what we don't want to do is we don't want those difficulties to happen to the developers we work with, right? So we've been through it. We've been through being cut by a publisher. We've been through being having difficult conversations with publishers. So I used to say when I was younger I would never work for a publisher because of all of the difficulties I've had with them in the past. The only reason why I joined Playstack was because I know that the pub that Playstack do put the developer first, which I'm proud about Playstack that they do, and I'm sure the other publishers say that as well. But we really do at Playstack.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm relatively new to this industry, and it's been fascinating seeing publishers with their own identities. You know, you have a very sort of specific identity, other publishers have their own identity, and it's not just, you know, a random slew of games that you're releasing because you think they'll do really well. You're releasing games that sort of fit within your portfolio and your specialty and everything.
It's that's true. Although we kind of are, completely honest with you, we are a little bit of a mishmash, right? There are some games that you see and you think, oh, that looks like a Devolver Digital game. Like you look at Angerfoot and you think, oh, that's got Hotline Miami vibes. It's a bit edgy. You think that, oh, that's Devolver Digital. Whereas us, we like Hooded Horse, for instance, strategy game, the kings of strategy games, right? If you have a strategy game, just go to Hooded Horse because they're great. But us, we do a bit of everything. We got Balatro, we got Abiotic Factor, we got narrative driven game in the Golden Idol series. So we just want to release great games that we think people will love. And it works for companies like Devolver, it works for Hooded Horse, and I've got nothing wrong with that. Whereas here we're probably out of all the indie publishers, we're probably the one with the least kind of identity. Like you don't look at a game and think that's a Playstack game, but hopefully you'll look at a game and think, if you see a good game, you'll think, oh, that could be a Playstack game because they release really good games. And that's our aim, is our identity is to just release good games. But hopefully that continues.
Absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat for the time being. So uh, Safe's asked, you know, advice on early career professionals looking to pivot into this industry with a more generalized skill set. I suppose, you know, you've hinted at this already, but yeah, it'd be good to hear your sort of thoughts on where people would, I suppose, what people should be looking at in terms of positions or roles within publishers
Yeah,
that would
yeah,
meet some of the sort of more generalized skills, perhaps.
yeah, definitely. I think choose your area. Quite obvious. It sounds a little bit obvious, but choose the area that you love the most, be it production, be it marketing, be it social media, customer service, um, and then depending on the type of role you have, build a portfolio. I actually say, like, to production candidates, you can actually kind of build like a portfolio, believe it or not, as a producer. You could kind of, especially if you're this is one of your first jobs or that, show how you would build like a Jira backlog, right? Or a Trello backlog, and just make up a game and just put some examples to say, oh, this is how I would break down the features, and this is how I would estimate tasks, and that would go really well in an interview. But then, aside from that, think about, if you can, and I know not everyone can, think about internships or helping at shows as well. Like, like for instance, in the UK, you've got like the Pocket Game series in the UK. They get a lot of students that I believe, I think they still do. They get a lot of students that help out, like uni students that help them out, like working on the some of the stands, giving the badges out and that kind of stuff. But then they also let you go to talks and go to meet people. And those kind of networking opportunities are great. Like GDC, for instance, I was speaking at GDC this year, and they have a scheme. I don't know much about it, but I was chatting to some of the staff there, and they have a scheme to allow some students to apply to volunteer there, and they give out some grants. So those kind of things I think it's worth doing. And if you do go to that kind of event, print out some CVs and just don't feel like you can't like doorstep people at a show. Say, look, just go up to someone, say, look, I'm really sorry, I know you're really busy, but I just want to pass you my CV in case anything comes up in this particular area, because I just think that shows proactiveness. And I know it's difficult, especially when you're young, just walking up to someone and that kind of stuff. But that if you really want to get in the industry, just give it a go. And and I think if you can, and if you can afford to do that, or if your university has some funding for that kind of thing, then I think that's I think that's a way that you can definitely meet and network with people.
Absolutely, those shows are fascinating places, and I think you can get a real good sense of different aspects of the industry and the various sort of shifts that are happening and the trends and everything just by talking to people and getting their taking their temperature essentially. So yeah, no, it's really really good to hear that you're open to people sort of coming up to you and saying hello, which is really important. So we do actually have not to plug another session here, but we've got a session on networking and events on Friday this week. So for everyone here, just in the audience, do feel free to sign up
Look,
to that one.
and what I say is, look, networking is tough. Look, at any age, right? I find it difficult sometimes, especially being that if you're at a show all day and then you've been invited to drinks at the end and you just want to go to the hotel and you want to roll up in the fetal position and say, "Oh, I just need to sleep." What you need to remember is some of these shows, they only happen once a year, and you just need to think to yourself, take advantage of it and take advantage of these shows. And it's difficult and it's hard. I'm quite socially awkward myself, so I find it quite difficult. But you just the more you go to, the more you get used to it, and the more the more you'll find it easier to network. But take some. Do you know what I find really useful as well? Like I generally don't have business cards anymore, but be on LinkedIn. Take a screenshot of your, where you can share like your QR code. Take a screenshot of that in case you lose network, because some of these events have really low network, or some of these parties are in places with in basements or whatever. But take a screenshot of like your LinkedIn QR code. So if you do meet someone and you say I'll connect with LinkedIn, you can share it without having to have your network handy.
That's very very good advice. Yeah, I've been caught out many a time by shaky networks. So that's good. So a couple more questions in the sort of Q&A box here. I mean, Mike's asked if you see value in indie studios having a dedicated sort of marketeer on their team to liaise and coordinate with publishers. Do you think that that can sort of help the relationship, make it easier or seamless, or you know, as a publisher yourself, do you want to be talking directly to the developers themselves?
Uh, yeah, look, I think ideally you get a lot of agents nowadays as well, but I prefer to chat directly with the developers. Having a dedicated marketer, having someone that is good and confident in talking is always good, obviously, when you're talking to a publisher. But I think when it comes to the due diligence phase, when we've seen a game and we think, oh, we like this game, we want to have a chat with your lead coder, your lead designer, just to get a vibe from you, because it's important for us to know that you can this developer deliver in their promise. You can have a great like vertical slice and a great demo, but that doesn't mean that you can get the game done. It could be a great game by the end of the year or 6 months, whatever you promise. Now, part of that, of course, is the help from us, right? The QA, the localization, the usability stuff that I've been talking about. But so we're not just expecting you to do it on your own. It's about us helping you. But it's just to make the due diligence. We just want to make sure that you're up for it and we're up for it. One of the things that I would say is be very careful what you promise, right? we are our group, especially our due diligence, are very experienced. If we see a really good demo and then you're promising to have the game done in 6 months and it's like just 100K, and then we're looking at the game design doc and we're looking at the roadmap and we're like, this roadmap's not being done in 6 months. Just be honest, right? Don't think that. Don't try and you'll lie your way to a contract. And it's don't worry. Once we signed it, we'll just delay the game. If I saw a timeline and a roadmap and a schedule, and I looked at your Jira and I saw no contingency, for instance, no contingency for QA, that would be a big red flag to me. It would be like they're not really thinking about these stuff. So you need to be honest with the publisher, and you need to be honest because they'll see those things, right? They'll see, oh, you're not thinking about QA. Oh, you've not built in like a 10-15% contingency on things being delayed, or someone, God forbid, gets run over by a bus or something. That's what your contingency is there for. So make sure that you're just very honest with the publisher right from the start, because that will be uncovered before you sign up with the publisher.
No, definitely, and I suppose as well, thinking back to sort of getting a career in publishing, some of these elements are sort of informed by your own experience with games development. So you have a better understanding of where those choke points come and everything like that. So that's
And,
really,
and
really
look,
important.
and sometimes the developer is so new, they don't think about contingency, or they don't think about QA, which is fine. And we'll have that discussion. And if they are new and if there are some things that they haven't thought about, that's kind of understandable because they've not been through it. But it's the ones that have done it before that you put a little bit more detail look into the schedule to make sure that they're being totally honest. And generally people are, but very small instances of anything. But
Absolutely. I mean, thinking back to your sort of your own journey, I think it'd be really interesting to sort of hear maybe what the sort of trends you didn't expect were that have emerged in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, maybe sort of post COVID, perhaps. I don't know. That perhaps students might be able to sort of latch onto now and benefit from getting a much better understanding of sort of for the future, perhaps.
that's a good question. I think it depends. So if you're thinking about setting up your own indie studio, or you're thinking about you've got an idea of some games you want to make, I think it's very important that you look at the market and you do some genre analysis. Like if you're thinking about doing a platform game for Steam, for instance, then your game's got to be pretty special to be successful as a platform game. Sure, there's games like Pizza Tower and that kind of stuff, but from a platform point of view, they're very few and far between. So understand the market you're going for, understand the genre, understand what your competitors are in the genre, and how your game is going to be better than that, and why you're going to sell more of it because it's different or it's very similar, but this is the unique USP, unique selling point compared to the competition. And I just think it's very important just to understand that when we sign a game, we often do a thing called a pillar analysis, where we look at um, we do this with the developers, and we look at the game, we look at the core pillars of the game, and we say, let's say it's a platform game, and we say, okay, one of the core pillars is the controls, and then we look at the competition, and we rate them from like average or non-existent, if it's like multiplayer, doesn't have multiplayer, to like great or outstanding. And then we all rate where we think the competitors are in all these key pillars, and then we look to see where your game is, and then where your game is currently, and where your game has to be, so we can see in the core areas, we can see how good you have to be compared with the competition and what we have to aim for. And that's one of the key exercises that we do at the start, and it's quite interesting in that regard.
No, that's really really good to understand. Obviously, competitor analysis is something that you're working on, sort of, and amassing an awful lot of data as well. I suppose being adept at sort of
And
analysis.
yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say a lot of this you can get free. If you look at like SteamDB and just look at the top seller list on Steam. And yeah, but SteamDB is great. It gives you our Gamalytic. It gives you some rough sales estimates. Not perfect, but they'll do the job if you're looking at specific genres. So use these free tools, and because there are a few out, there are quite a few out there.
Absolutely, and being able to sort of demonstrate a bit of familiarity with these things is going to be helpful, I suppose, which is
Yeah.
good. Got a wonderful question in the chat here from Freya. I mean, she's asked if you could describe your typical day. So what kind of typical day you might have? I suppose it's probably maybe it's a typical month, but yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what you're getting up to, sort of day to day. What as a producer.
Yeah, well, one of the benefits of working at smaller companies, especially a company like Playstack, where you're not a big publisher like EA or Activision, etc., is we get to dabble on a bit of everything. Um, one of my typical day could be running a development stand up for one of my developers. Could be reviewing playtest feedback from from a demo that we've just released. Could be reviewing focus test feedback from a more private, selected company such as Go Testify or Playtest Cloud that we've used, and going through that feedback. Reviewing the risks on each project daily to make sure that we're, as I said before, we're on time, on budget, and on quality. If we've got a big show such as Next Fest or one of the showcases, making sure the marketing team's got everything they need, making sure that the storefronts are up to date and all the submissions have been going in, liaising with the QA team to make sure that to see what the latest QA reports are, looking at the bug count, etc. It's all very varied. Dealing with POs, purchase orders, and making sure developers have been paid, make sure milestones have been checked off, and yeah. So it's quite varied. It's quite varied in a good way. I kind of like it because each day is different, and we're kind of not, because we are a small publisher. Like you get in some of the bigger publishers, you get like art producers, for instance, and they just manage the art outsourcing for a project. Usually for like the AAA project where you've got like multiple art outsourcers and that kind of thing. Whereas here the producers, as I said, just do a bit of everything. Just roll their sleeves up and get stuff done because we're only a small team.
Yeah, I think the smaller your team is, or the smaller your business is, the more hats you seem to wear, which is sometimes a really fun thing, but also sometimes exhausting.
It can be exhausting. I quite like it because it keeps it varied, and
Yeah,
I know
definitely.
the names of everyone in the office, and I'm terrible with names, and I don't like it when I don't know people's names. So yeah, no, look, I like it like that. But yeah, it's definitely not for everyone. Maybe some people do prefer a bit more predictability in their work, and I do kind of see that. But yeah, not quite knowing what fires to put out in the next 24 hours just makes it quite interesting. And that's the thing,
Definitely.
right? It's never been so easy to make a game, but it's never been so difficult to make a successful game. It's like because there's so many things that you need to think about nowadays.
Definitely. And out of curiosity, I suppose this is a bit of a sort of stretchy question, but I mean, your lead producer. I mean, how many titles are you sort of looking after? I suppose that are sort of ultimately your responsibility, and what might that look like compared to like a junior producer or more entry level position?
Yeah, so I look over a few of the titles now. It's kind of a few of the titles because they're split out across various release windows, so that makes it manageable. I think a bit more of a junior producer might focus on one, maybe two particular games. And again, it just depends on what the release window is like. If you have a game that's coming out in 2027, then there's a lot less to do on a day to day than if you've got a game coming out this year, for instance, or even a game next year, because there's still a number of tasks that has to be on a project. So what we try to do with people is we try to give the people, especially some of the more junior staff, some breathing space in their work, but also try and stagger the release windows where you can. And that doesn't always happen because games get delayed, and games get pushed back, etc. And then you might get in a situation where games come out at the same time, which is never ideal. But look, we try to space it out to give people breathing space because it's important. We don't want to overwhelm people, especially the more junior staff that are still new to, I don't know, could be new to running stand-ups or running focus tests, etc.
Absolutely. And I suppose, if one was working for a larger publisher, you might find sort of those roles sort of split up. Maybe one is more focused on art and technically looks after more games, but only on a sort of specific vertical, I suppose.
Yes,
So yeah.
yes, definitely.
No, that's really, really good. We've got another question in the chat here about your life at Lion's Head. um, eh, what what was it like working with Peter Molyneux? Huh? Are we able to talk about this? What was your experience like?
Yeah, like so I had a really good relationship with Peter. I When I first got in the industry, it was a bit like one of my first tasks was to test a bug on Peter's machine, and I was just so nervous because I was like, "Oh my God, this is like theme park, syndicate, magic carpet. It's like my childhood, and this is popular. This is like this Peter Molyneux." Um, uh, People on this call are probably way too young for any of those games, but it was like, I was quite starstruck initially, but then after a few weeks, you kind of get over that. I enjoy working with Peter. Peter's one of those characters that will kind of be working at like till midnight, and then you get in the next day and he won't tell you what he's put into the game, which can be rather frustrating. And you're QA, and then you suddenly see a new feature, and the game suddenly crashes, and then you look to see who checked the code in, and it was Peter, and it's like, I thought we had a code lock, and it's like, well, not for Peter. And he'll do some little cheeky things like that, but that he would do them for the benefit of the game. But look, I see him at conferences occasionally. I always go up and see how he is. I'm really excited for Masters of Albion that they've recently announced, because it looks like it's back to some of the old Lionhead days in terms of both the staff they got there and the game. Um, but yeah, he was really good to work with. He is a legend in the UK industry, and it's interesting to see how some of the legends in the industry are now doing. Some have gone to mobile. You've got Braben at Frontier that's doing well with the Elite and the Coaster games. So it's good, and I love my time at Lionhead, and I still look back at it now, and with a lot of it was great. It was really good.
That's really, really good to hear. I think it is fascinating seeing where everyone from sort of slightly older studios has ultimately sort of gravitated to and ended up as well. I think that's really nice. I mean,
I agree.
as well, it goes back to our sort of talk on the networking side of things. These people are often around and about, and you can meet some very, very interesting, important humans when it comes
and
to who shaped the industry.
and and kind of similar back to the network point. They're just people. And right, so
Mm.
go up and speak. If you see him at an event, just say, look, I just want to go up and say hello. Just do that, because Peter's very up for that. You know, we have work experience people at Lionhead that they got work experience by just going up and speaking to Peter or people at the event. So don't feel free you can't. If they're obviously in there in a conversation or they look busy, then maybe not so. But otherwise, do just go up, and you might see, if you're at Gamescom, you might see him on the street on Cologne. So you know, that kind of stuff. You bump into people, and
Yeah.
do use that opportunity to go and say hello. They'll appreciate it as well,
Mm.
I think.
No, definitely. That's a really, really, really good bit of advice there. Um, okay, let's see. We've got another question in the chat. It's a bit more sort of focused around, I guess, the nitty gritty. Obviously, there's an awful lot of change within the industry, and has been recently, obviously, with COVID and everything, about sort of hybrid working and remote working and working in an office. I mean, I don't actually know how Playstack sort of functions, if you are sort of remote or if you're hybrid. How does that work for you, and what would your sort of preference be on perhaps recruiting new staff if you have sort of various options?
Yeah, so I'm hybrid. I work out of London 2, sometimes 3 days a week. Um, we do have some remote workers. Some workers are hired remotely. I like hybrids because I think, look, I have nothing wrong with working at home 100%. I did it during COVID. It was absolutely fine. Got a lot more done, and I really enjoyed it. The thing I do love about hybrid working is I personally I do like the interacting with real people, rather than just on the screen every day. And when you're 100% remote, you have to get yourself into a routine of making sure you go out and get some time outside. Make sure you know when you finish work and start work, because you kind of, when you're 100% remote, you kind of never finish. And that's one of the things about commuting. There was always a start point and an end point, and you get time just to de-stress, and to just forget about work for a minute. But when you're 100% remote, sometimes that's a bit, depends on the individual, but that can be a little difficult. So look, I could do 100% remote. It takes a certain mindset to do. One of the things that I do like about hybrid is working closely with the junior members of staff as well. I find that sometimes junior staff, less they're a bit more awkward, is they send you less messages because they don't want to interrupt you. Whereas if you're sitting next to a desk, they're more than they feel like you're more approachable in person than um than remote. So I actually think that in-person work for junior start, I think it's difficult, especially with the socializing. Like when I was just starting at Lionhead, socializing was quite, and this is before I had a family and was settled down. Socializing, just going for a coffee, going to the pub, was quite a big thing. And I think for junior staff, especially some that, they just moved to work in London or haven't got many friends about, haven't got that support structure, um, I think it is a bit difficult, especially if you're I'm lucky, I've got a small garden, I can sit outside, I can get some air. Some people that maybe they work live in like a shared flat or a small bedsit and that kind of stuff, and it's a lot more difficult. It's a lot more difficult to work from home, especially in the summer where you've got like an air conditioned office that's quite nice to use when it's baking outside. So there's definitely so many more pros about working from home, being hybrid. Like my relationship with my son's got so much better because I don't just see him when I get home and I'm tired and it's like 7 o'clock at night. I get to pick him up from school occasionally and take him to school when I'm working from home, and that kind of thing really has helped my personal life and my relationship with him. So it's definitely been I've definitely embraced it and both remote working and hybrid. It is just the junior staff that I do feel a bit sort of sorry for is the wrong term, but just be careful if you get 100% remote work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite easy for well, for you and I to sort of be able to compare. We've both obviously had sort of complete in-office roles. We've both had complete remote working roles, and then now sort of like more hybrid roles. I mean, from a personal perspective, I think hybrid gives you, which should it can give you more focus when you are in person. So it's not an opportunity that you have 24/7. So you end up making the most of it, and actually finding that balance is really really important. And yeah, I would urge anyone looking at completely remote working to make sure that they are, I guess, not overworking and getting some time out occasionally, because it's quite hard to
I
do,
agree. I agree
especially
completely.
when you're wearing many hats and everything. So we're coming to sort of the end of our sort of chat here. We've done really well, I think. Any sort of final thoughts, Aaron, for people that are looking to break into publishing and maybe sort of look at careers in publishing as well?
Look, it's you've only got to load up any IGN, Eurogamer, or any kind of news site to see that it's a difficult industry at the moment. But there's also so much opportunity in the industry at the moment. There's so many new indie publishers. There's probably less routes for more of the AAA style games in this country at the moment to get into. But there's, especially with indie publishing, there's there is a lot of opportunity out there. Just if you really want to get in it, and which I would recommend you could, because it's a great industry and working for a publisher is fantastic. Just follow some of the advice I said earlier about the networking and portfolios, knowing what you want to do, what you want to be good at, what you want to focus on, and just be as good as you can on that. It's an exciting industry. It's an ever-changing industry. You're not going to find a job that you're going to be working for the same company in 20, 30 years. But to be honest, with most industries at the moment, the days of having a job with the same company for 40, 50 years, unless you work at the NHS or unless you're a teacher, and that is very unlikely, right? Because the world of work has changed compared to what it was like a generation ago. But so bear that in mind in terms of making sure you have some savings, because you will get made redundant in the games industry. I've been made redundant a couple of times. I'd love to say I'll never be made redundant again, but who knows? I'll probably be going to be working for another 25 years, so it will probably happen at some point. But it's just part of it. Um, just yeah, just keep your head down, work hard, look for opportunities, internships, and connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Everyone's welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I can't promise that I'll get a quick turnaround in replying if you have any questions, but please drop me a message if you do have any questions. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to meet you at any conferences or give any advice or any additional questions that you have.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. It's been really, really nice chatting to you. I think you've had an awful lot to say there. So yeah, really, really appreciate your time today. And yeah, I'll get everything sort of finished and uploaded and everything like that. So and I'll share with everyone that's come along, and appreciate your time and your offer to connect on LinkedIn. That's very, very kind. All
No,
right.
it's fine. Just search my name and it should come up. And it's great. Thank you for the questions. Hope it's been insightful. Look, I was in as I said, I did some work experience back in the day, and I was so eager to get in the industry. I know how exciting this is, and I know how difficult it can be as well. So, but if you really want to do it, I know you can. I know you can do it.
Fantastic. Really, really good to hear.
Cool.
Tremendous. Well, thank you so much again, everyone. Really
Soon.
appreciate it. We'll draw to a close there. And